Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are here with Austin from Ohio, and today is Wednesday, October 27th, 2021. I meant to do this yesterday, but I had some things to do, and by the time I wanted to get around to it, I couldn't sit down and do it because it was already too late in the day, and this video is probably going to be a normal one, so probably close to an hour long or so. Something like that. But I do appreciate you all, and I appreciate everybody that's here on a daily basis, everybody that comes here through other channels, or if you happen to search me out, or if you happen to know what's going on in general. I appreciate you and I respect you, because that means you are smarter than a good portion of the population of the people of the world. Unfortunately, it's like that, and we're probably just going to have to get used to that fact, because it doesn't seem like people are waking up as they should be. And if you think about it, our founding fathers or any other generation before, like the last three, if things would have been going on to this extent and for this long, they would have taken action. It don't matter what kind of action it was, they would have at least been on the same page, and everybody would be talking about things that are going on. And not enough people are doing that. That's why they shut down. What they shut down in 2020? The bars, the churches, the diners, the places that people can gather and talk. Because they didn't want any of that, because they don't want anybody knowing what they're actually up to. Now, I'm going to jump into it because I have some things for you guys today. Let's take a look at this first one. How about this? And this is from the CDC Director, Dr. Rochelle Walensky. Unvaccinated police government workers to be sent for, quote, education and counseling. What does that sound like to you? Because it don't sound like anything else to me except what it is. Appearing on Fox News Sunday, the CDC director, Rochelle Walensky, declared that the Biden regime is planning to provide vaccine-hesitant police and other government workers with education and counseling to make them comfortable about taking the shots. Walensky told Chris Wallace that, quote, we have seen that these mandates are getting more and more people vaccinated. What we know from police workforce is that there have been more deaths from the coronavirus over the last year and a half than all other causes of death for that workforce combined. I don't believe that one bit whatsoever at all. Adding, so we believe it's very important to get these people vaccinated. Then came the kicker. Quote, there is a plan, should these people not want to be vaccinated, toward education and counseling to get people the information they need so that they are feeling comfortable in getting vaccinated. This literally is re-education facilities being put forth in the mainstream. What news station is this? Fox? So in the mainstream, they're just casually putting it out there that, we're going to be re-educating people, police and government, so no big deal. It's not just going to be them, folks. It's not. As we have continually noted, police and firefighters all over the U.S. have formed resistance groups against the vaccine mandates, and many officers have made videos of themselves signing off after being forced to resign. Those people are to be highly respected. Those people are the people that drew the line in the sand. The people that said enough is enough. We are not going to abide by your tyrannical ways anymore. Granted, I wish, the police at least would have taken the reins of the constitutionally protected rights that they have as, law enforcement officers, even though originally in the Constitution, only sheriffs and constables were a thing, but, we're far past that. But police do not at all, and I will repeat this, they do not have to enforce any unlawful laws, statutes, mandates, anything like that. And the best part is that legally and lawfully, if we're still talking legally and lawfully after all this time, you cannot be prosecuted for doing that because that is your main job. To stand for the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, so help you God. Washington State Trooper Robert LeMay, who infamously signed off after 22 years in the job by telling Democrat Governor Jay Inslee to, quote, kiss my ass, has warned that the Biden administration has awoke the sleeping giant and that extreme numbers of police are walking off the job. They actually want that, sir. I do applaud you. Robert LeMay, I do applaud you for what you're doing. But I feel like you're not playing with a full deck of cards. They want police to walk off the job. They want all these people to leave. We've discussed this many times on this channel. They want businesses to collapse. They want people to walk out of their jobs, especially those in the medical field, those in law enforcement, those in government. They want people to do that. You know why? So they can bring in the United Nations. Correct. And we're going to go over something today that I've found. And I just found it actually just a little bit ago. And I was looking into it. And a lot of people have reported on it. And it seems to be authentic because you can download the full document. But I haven't verified it 100%. But we'll get there when we get there. Former Cincinnati and Detroit Police Chief James Craig told Tucker Carlson last week that this is all by design. It's not by accident. Further declaring that Democrats forcing good cops out of their jobs is a continuation of the utterly ridiculous defund the police agenda. I wouldn't say that that's what that is, actually. I would read this as, well, not Democrats, all of them, because they all work together, are forcing good cops out of their jobs is a continuation of the utterly ridiculous Great Reset New World Order agenda. Defund the police is an offset of that. So, yes. So this is happening right here. So if you are a police officer or government worker, or however this is decided, whatever purview you fall under to these people, you are going to be sent to a re-education facility to make sure that you have all the up-to-date information that you need in order for you to, go get your poison. Moving on. All right, here we are over at Forbes magazine. There's no supply chain shortage or inflation. There's just central planning. That sounds about right, don't it? It's great that so many have copies of Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations, but very unfortunate that so few have read it. The alleged supply chain problems we're enduring right now were explained by Smith in the book's opening pages. Smith wrote about a pin factory, and the then remarkable truth that one man in the factory working alone could maybe produce one pin each day, but several men working together could produce tens of thousands. Work divided is what enables the very work specialization that drives enormous productivity. If this was true in the 18th century, pin factory, imagine how vivid the truth is today. Figure that something as basic as the creation of a pencil is the consequence of global cooperation. So what kind of remarkable global symmetry leads to a creation of an airplane, car, or computer? The kind that can't be planned is the short answer, but more realistically, the only answer. Please keep this in mind as you read media coverage of the so-called supply chain disruptions resulting in shortages that are said to be causing inflation. If you want a bigger laugh, Read about what President Biden wants to do in order to get supply back on the market with an eye on replenishing U.S. retail shelves that are increasingly bare. He's decreed 24-hour port operations. Yes, thanks to the 46th president, we now know what held the Soviets back and ultimately destroyed the Soviet Union. Their ports weren't open long enough, thus the shortages of everything. Yeah, I basically brought this up just to show that there are many different views on what's going on, but the truth ultimately is that they are letting it sit there. And they can blame the truckers, they can do all of this, they can, dance around it any way they want, but we called this because they told us that they were going to do this. All of the above would be funny if it weren't so sad. Media members, quote, experts, economists, and politicians don't even disappoint anymore. To say they do would be to flatter them. Either they think we have inflation, shortages, or a combination of both. Wrong on all counts. Really, who was talking about supply chain shortages or the impossibility that is demand-driven inflation in early 2020? Very few were, and that's because the U.S. economy was largely free then. Time out. When this guy says really who was talking about supply chain shortages or the impossibility that is demand-driven inflation in early 2020, we were. There's countless videos of people even before I was making videos, because I didn't start till January of 2021, so early this year. But there were so many people, so many different discussions in different comment sections all over the internet, not just YouTube, not just BitChute, whatever. People were talking about that this day was coming. This day is here. So that is who was talking about supply chain shortages and the impossibility that is demand-driven inflation in early 2020 there, sir. And the U.S. economy was not largely free then. That's a lie. At which point politicians panicked. That's also a lie. They're not panicking. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. And in panicking, they imposed a rather draconian form of command and control on the U.S. economy. That did not come from panicking. That came from, actually, central planning, the name of your article here. Some were free to work, some weren't, and more still were free to work and operate their businesses within strict political limits, from freedom to central planning in a very small amount of time. That's true. At which point, it's worth considering, once again, the simple pin factory that Smith witnessed in the 18th century versus the global cooperation that was the norm 19 months ago. The supply lines of February 2020 were impossibly complicated structures that no politician could ever hope to design. Think billions of individuals around the world pursuing their narrow work specialization on the way to enormous global plenty. Put another way, the shelves in economically free countries were heaving, with all manner of products based on economic cooperation. That was staggering in scope. Brilliant as some experts claim to be, and brilliant as some politicians think they are, as they look in the mirror, they could never construct the web of trillions of economic relationships that prevailed before the lockdowns. But they could destroy the web, and they did that, or they severely impaired it. So, nobody can even say that we haven't been unwoven as a society over the last 20 months or whatever, however long it's been. Seems like an eternity now. Nobody can ever say that, and there are people that still say that, even though you really can't. It's common sense, and we're seeing it now. We are seeing it now. Okay. In which case, let's please not insult reason by talking about shortages or inflation now. Let's instead be realistic and talk about central planning. We know from the 20th century that when politicians, authoritarians, or both substitute their intensely narrow knowledge for that of the marketplace, that immense want for very little and lousy supply is a logical result. Yes, it is. When we're not economically free, bare shelves are the inevitable result. Well, yeah, that's true, but also it's a result of malice, intent to cause these problems within the entire system, actually. But this is just what this guy is. This guy is, how do I say this? He's watering it down, is what he's doing. Watering it down, and he's not going into this with the mindset that you should have, that this is all intentional, this is all part of the New World Order agenda. They have been very clear with us. They've been more than very clear with us. They literally have told us this entire time exactly what they were doing. And then they would do it. And then people would say that, oh, you never said they were going to do that. And those were the same people that were making fun of us. Actually, they still make fun of us, so it don't even matter what we do or what we say. Because pride has taken over the people in America, especially. Pride has taken over the average person. Ego has ruled the average person. They will never admit that they might have been wrong. They will never admit that they might have been even remotely off on something. They have to be right 100% of the time. Will never admit that they're wrong because for some reason they think that it diminishes their character. I still don't. Anyway. So basically they're talking about product and service abundance is certain consequence, yet again, of the infinite actions and trillions of economic relationships entered into by billions of people. These commercial tie-ups were constructed by consenting individuals over many years and many decades, only for them to be wrecked by a political class arrogantly seeking to protect us from ourselves. That's what happens when command and control replaces voluntary order. Yeah, that is what happens when command and control replaces the voluntary order, and it's been happening a lot longer than this guy understands. The remunerative ties that bind us fray or vanish altogether. Consenting profitable economic activity was suddenly illegal. Yet politicians and other experts are now only wringing their hands about a lack of supply. And then he's asking rhetorically, what did they think was going to happen? And he goes and talks about how politicians are dumb, basically, and they couldn't see this coming and blah, 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 but they knew all this was coming. They knew that this was they created the plan. They knew they were going to starve us out. They knew that they were going to use all of this once they started handing out the shots. But really, you could basically deduce this down into this guy's original thought, which was there's a central planning problem, not an inflation and storage or supply chain problem, which is technically true. But also it's a sort of a half-truth, because again, he's coming at it from politicians don't know any better, they're just dumb, and they just try to panic and do this and that. Like, no, they have very specific orders that they take on a cell phone under threat of bodily harm, family harm, ridicule, arrest, etc. But we'll skip past this one for now. All right, here we are over at msn.com. Guns down. America's leader says Biden has simply not done enough on gun control. So whatever Guns Down America is, I'm not sure. Probably they are some communist organization that definitely wants to infringe on your right to protect and defend yourself through your God-given right of self-defense. Defense of life, liberty, property, happiness, all of the above. But again, they're coming after the guns. I would bring up individual shootings, but we simply don't have enough time to go through all those articles, and you guys get it. They literally, every single day now, again, they're talking about school shootings, they're talking about shootings in the middle of cities, and robberies, and whatnot. Because again, the New World Order cannot succeed until the American public has been disarmed. The American public has been armed since our inception. You cannot conquer or take over a nation of 300 plus million people who are armed to the teeth. People in this country, with all of our arms combined, we outnumber and outgun every military combined in the earth. And that's just a fact. And again, I can destroy their gun control narrative in 10 seconds because according to them, anybody that owns a gun is a crazy lunatic, doesn't need to be having a gun, this and that. But I guarantee any one of you right now listening, just go walk down the street, knock on your neighbor's door. We don't actually do this because somebody might be like, why is this person going around asking all these questions? But I guarantee 4 out of every 5 houses will have a firearm in them or some type of firearm or weapon. And that's just a fact. I think the last I checked, there was about 75 guns per person in the United States, but I could be wrong on that figure. But that's a good thing because they will never, ever, ever try anything serious until they're confident that they can, come in and take over and establish order, as they like to say. Igor Volsky, executive director at Guns Down America, said that the Biden administration has simply not done enough when it comes to gun control issues. Oh, great, a communist. Sorry, guys, you had to hear me light my cigarette. Quote, the weapons we have today are just deadlier and more dangerous than what we had 15, 20 years ago. And that I think needs to change. Time out. The weapons that we as a society, including government, have, then yeah, they are more dangerous than what we had 15, 20 years ago. We, as in the people of the United States, no, they're not more dangerous than they were 20 years ago. They're actually the exact same thing. Actually, 15, 20 years ago, you could, have something better. So you could get more dangerous things 15, 20 years ago. I don't know what this person is saying. I really don't understand what they're saying. So that's a lie. And frankly, the president, to come back to him, needs to lead that charge because that's what he promised, Volsky said Thursday during an interview on Hill.tv. That's the cycle we're in. We live through a tragedy. We talk about it, how sad it is. There's some advocacy, some activism, and then we move on, he said. Early next month, the Supreme Court will consider its first major gun rights case in over a decade. Volsky said the court's decision could expand the meaning of the Second Amendment far beyond, frankly, what the founders intended. What? The founders intended for the people to be armed and to not be infringed upon. That's it. There's no other way to put that. And if anyone's going to come in here and try to argue with me about why don't you say the first part of the, okay. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. If you take that entire sentence and you dissect it based on what meanings that they had for those words back then. If you go get a Black's Law dictionary, you can see for yourself. Well-regulated means well-trained, in good working order. Militia, anybody over the age of 17. The whole body of the population. The Supreme Court has ruled on it many times. So there. That's what the founders intended. That's what it is. The challenge we're in today is actually pushing this administration and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer to actually live up to the promises they made and to fight for this issue. Because otherwise, the scene we saw played out in the courtroom yesterday is going to be on repeat over and over again across the country. Polsky's remarks come just one day after Nicholas Cruz, who killed 17 people in 2018 shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, pleaded guilty to all charges he faced. So just so happens after, 1 year anniversary, or one day after Nicholas Cruz pled guilty, then they come out and they start putting these articles out. And I'm sure we'll see a bunch more shootings. But yes, be on the lookout for this. Just because a lot of other things are going on doesn't mean that we can't also pay attention to this. Because this is very important. I understand, people say, if you're not going to use them, it don't matter, which technically is true. If people aren't going to use them when they need to, for defense of life, liberty, property, what have you, then yeah, it's no different than if you had none. But still, you know what I mean. This needs to be fought for. There's the reason that this was the Second Amendment, and it was because just in case the first one didn't work out. So, moving on. I want to just bring this up real quick. I don't want to go down through here and read all this because it's really just a bunch of whatever. But did we discover a new force of nature? New results from CERN. So, the results suggest beauty quarks decay into electrons and muons at different rates. So what they're doing is they're learning new things about the physics of our world. And, well, this is what they say. They say they're learning new things about the physics of our world. They never understood it before. We all know what this is. They literally have a statue of Shiva doing the dance of destruction right outside of this. And the stuff that they're messing with is, oh no, we should never, ever, ever have had the capability of creating something like this. Okay, the Large Hadron Collider sparked worldwide excitement in March as particle physicists reported tantalizing evidence for new physics, potentially a new force of nature. Now, our new result, yet to be peer-reviewed, from CERN's gargantuan particle collider, seems to be adding further support to the idea. So basically, they're talking about a new force of nature. And they go into like all this, mumbo-jumbo about inertia and the fundamental forces and the dark matter and all this, but we all know what this actually is. These characteristics of whatever, they've always existed. We just never had access to them because we don't go messing around with things we're not supposed to mess around with until, well, now. And I just brought this up to show you guys that. I will actually link this if you want to read more into it, but I really want to get to some other things. So, they're still messing around at CERN. Apparently, CERN is to be completed by 2022. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but there's a lot of things going on at CERN, and it's active right now, and they're talking about it in mainstream and tabloids, so also something to watch, of course. Moving on. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you guys. Not this perhaps, like this here. This first appeared in January 30th of 2019, but it popped up again, and this is well, first let me tell you, I have a piece of the document. I don't have the whole document, but I can download the PDF. So I'm going to go through it and all that and then bring it to you guys in a more prepared way. But I kind of just brought this up because I found it today. People are going through it again, and it, I guess, is going around again. I didn't hear about it the first time, but we're going to go ahead. It's called the UN Directive 001, and it's literally to establish a new world order by 2025, and we will go to that portion now. Okay. Now, if anybody wants to jump in, help me verify this to be true or false, either way, but a lot of people are talking about it again, and I have the first page here of the document itself, and I'm going to go download it, and I'm going to try to reverse search it, see where it came from, do all that good stuff, but I just found it kind of interesting because of the contents of it, so I'm just going to jump right into it. And like I said, I don't know if this is 100% or not. Right now, I am leaning toward the fact that it is true, just because I found a PDF to download that is the actual document. Plus, a lot of other people are talking about it, respected pages and people within the community. But then again, it could just be something that was written up, whatever. But regardless, I'm going to go through here. I'm going to read this to you guys, and then we can get back to what we were doing. Okay, so according to this is United Nations Directive 001, the start of New World Order in our calendar year of 4 July 2025. In accordance with the approval of the majority of the United Nations members, the following directive is in effect upon receipt and will be implemented immediately, with the exception of those subjects or items that will obviously require additional time to change and or implement. All United Nations states will forthwith be known by their new name and corresponding number. For instance, the former nation of Canada will now be known as America Area 0001. Former United States of America will now be simply known as America Area 0002. Let me see if I can find a better one of these. Sorry guys, stand by. Okay, so here I am at this other page here, and this is from September 22nd, 2021. So this is going around again. Conspiracy users have found a very strange document entitled UN Directive 001, dated July 4th, 2025. The UN directive was thrown online by some serious people. Some say they are Rotary members to study public opinion and gradually accustom the brains of the citizens of the future united world to what will happen. Whether it will be July 4, 2025, or everything will happen in a little later or a little earlier is unknown. And then they show this here, and hopefully this will take me to... What? Was it not going to let me go on here? Huh. Let's try this one. Oh, look, this one is working. Sort of. Well, I'm not sure if I can even, because you have to like make an account to get this full document or whatever. But this is from the University of San Carlos, so they're passing it around too, so I can't even zoom in on here. All you have to do is type in UN Directive 001. Alright, I'm just going to read where I was. I know you won't be able to see it, and I do apologize for that. I should have been more prepared when I brought this up, but you know what they say. Okay, let's see. The former nations in Europe will collectively and henceforth be known as Europe 0010, with new map to delineate boundaries between Europe 0010 and Asia 0020. All new names for former nations within the various world continents are listed in the addendum to this directive, along with new maps in order to establish boundaries and locations of United Nations Control Centers, so UNCCs, which will administer all future government, administrative, military, and policing responsibilities. Now, this is the part where it gets kind of weird. This is why I'm not very sure. Not sure if this was actually written up or if it was something that was just thrown out there or what. But I will need help verifying this from you guys, please. As of 17 March 2025, the former United States of America has turned over their military and police forces to the United Nations for control and responsibility, and they will be disbanded or integrated into our global United Nations forces as soon as possible. The former United States of America, being the last nation to cede authority over to the United Nations Secretary Council, has created untold problems and delays for our United Nations plans, and will soon feel the brunt of rapid and decisive changes to meet our scheduled goals of a unified one world government. So basically just says entire executive branch of the former United States dismissed, and our selected United Nations leaders will assume those duties with an approved administrative council to assume those duties. Judicial branch likewise, executive, legislative, judicial, all being turned over to the United Nations. And if I go to view the full document, it wants me to do all this like registering for like this website or whatever. And I'm not going to do all that right now. But I will go ahead and link I'll link this one here for you guys so you guys can at least check it out here. And there's a bunch of other stuff on here, so you guys can go down through here and read for yourself. But yes, don't know if it's true, don't know if it's false, but we'll get back to what we were doing. Moving on. Speaking of the United Nations, here we are over at the Hill. U.S. backs Taiwan's participation in the UN. So, those of you here in Taiwan, looks like the U.S. is backing your participation in the United Nations. This is not good. The United States on Tuesday backed Taiwan's inclusion in the United Nations system, a move that is likely to rankle China, which considers the island under the authority of Beijing. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called Taiwan's meaningful participation in the UN system a pragmatic issue, not a political one. The fact that Taiwan participated robustly in certain UN specialized agencies for the vast majority of the past 50 years is evidence of the value the international community places in Taiwan's contributions, Blinken said in a statement. I wouldn't even be flattered by what he just said there. People in Taiwan need to say, no, we are not joining the United Nations. You don't want to join the United Nations. The Secretary praised the island as a democratic success story and representing the values that align with the UN. He added that Taiwan's exclusion from the World Health Assembly robs the global community of its world-class response to the C-19 situation, and raised the issue that Taiwan scientists, technical experts, business persons, artists, educators, students, and human rights advocates are blocked from participating as members of civil society. Wait. Blocked from participating as members of civil society. Why? Because they won't participate in a world government? Because, wait a minute, they might want to be their own country? Wow, in the 21st century, we can't have that. Taiwan's exclusion undermines the important work of the UN and its related bodies, all of which stand to benefit greatly from its contributions. Well, yeah. That's a good thing if it undermines what the UN's about, because they were created as a world governing body. Okay, so the Secretary's statement follows a virtual meeting last week between U.S. and Taiwanese officials that focused on supporting Taiwan's ability to participate in the United Nations and contribute on global issues like public health, environment and climate change, developmental assistance, technical standards, economic cooperation, according to a readout of the meeting. And it says China has long opposed Taiwan's participation among UN bodies and pushes back against any international move that appears to recognize the island as separate from Beijing. So basically, this is just going to go back and forth, and then Taiwan will be... What are you doing? Stop. Taiwan will be absorbed into the United Nations. You can bet on that, because that's part of the plan. And we're going to go over it again. The what do they call it again? Multilateral... No, reinvigorating multilateralism. That's what it is. I will link this as well, but I really wanted to get to something else. A couple more things, actually. So, the U.S. supports Taiwan's participation in the United Nations. So if you are in Taiwan, you should write your, I don't know if you have congressmen over there. I'm not sure what type of government you have set up, but write your leaders. Call them. Tell them no. You don't want to participate in the United Nations. Okay, let's see. So, I'll go ahead and read this last part here. Last week, President Biden suggested that the U.S. could come to Taiwan's defense if it came under attack. A statement that was quickly clarified by the White House to say there was no change in U.S. policy, and that prompted an angry response from the Chinese. Oh yes, the back and forth, the Hegelian dialectic, whatever. Yet there is strong bipartisan support for greater U.S. commitments to Taiwan. And basically, the Taiwan Allies International Protection and Enhancement Initiative Act 2019 law that directs the State Department to report to Congress steps taken to strengthen Taiwan's diplomatic relations and partnerships around the world passed with unanimous support in the House and Senate. So, that's basically what's going on here. Now, moving on. Alright, here we are over at the Gray Zone. And this is an article from October 8th, 2021, of course. Behind NATO's cognitive warfare, battle for your brain, waged by Western militaries. So, that's basically straightforward, right? Battle for your brain, cognitive warfare, waged by Western militaries. And they've been doing stuff like this for a long time. They have records going back decades and decades and decades and decades on this type of thing here. Because you don't have to physically fight any army or population. You conquer the people's mind. You don't have to do anything. They will do it for you. Something that they've realized. They would rather not get their hands dirty. They would rather not go and have to wage war in the United States. They like to do it this way. Slow but sure. Western governments in the NATO military alliance are developing tactics of cognitive warfare, using the supposed threats of China and Russia to justify waging a battle for your brain in the human domain to make everyone a weapon. NATO is developing new forms of warfare to wage a battle for the brain, as the military alliance put it. The U.S.-led NATO military cartel has tested novel modes of hybrid warfare against its self-declared adversaries, including economic warfare, cyber warfare, information warfare, and psychological warfare. Now NATO is spinning out on an entirely new kind of combat it has branded cognitive warfare, described as the weaponization of brain sciences. The new method involves hacking the individual by exploiting the vulnerabilities of the human brain in order to implement more sophisticated social engineering. Now, this works on just regular people like you and I. But imagine what they'll be able to do now that they are introducing transhumanism into the world. I.e., C-19 shot. This is beyond treason. Beyond treason. Until recently, NATO had divided war into 5 different operational domains: air, land, sea, space, and cyber. But with its development of cognitive warfare strategies, the military alliance is discussing a new 6th level, the human domain. Oh yeah, the 6th level is all you need. The other 5 don't mean anything if you have the 6th, because you can prevent all of that by mastering the 6th, if you understand what I'm saying. A 2020 NATO-sponsored study of this new form of warfare clearly explained, while actions taken in the 5 domains are executed in order to have an effect on the human domain, cognitive warfare's objective is to make everyone a weapon. The brain will be the battlefield of the 21st century, the report stressed. Humans are the contested domain, and future conflicts will likely occur amongst the people digitally first, and physically thereafter in proximity to hubs of political and economic power. And here is the front cover of the document. So yes, these people are doing this. And this is your good old world military right here, NATO. While the NATO-backed study insisted that much of its research on cognitive warfare is designed for defensive purposes, it also conceded that the military alliance is developing offensive tactics, stating, quote, "The human is very often the main vulnerability, and it should be acknowledged in order to protect NATO's human capital, but also to be able to benefit from our adversaries' vulnerabilities." In a chilling disclosure, the report said explicitly that the objective of cognitive warfare is to harm the societies and not only the military. So that goes against war in general. Wars used to be fought, with honor against, like, military on military. And regular people were usually, if there was any honor between the two parties, left out of it. You don't bomb civilian installations or schools or hospitals or anything like that. You bomb military targets. But these people want to harm the societies and not only the military. This is the new future of New World Order warfare. With entire civilian populations in NATO's crosshairs, the report emphasized that Western militaries must work more closely with academia to weaponize social sciences and human sciences and help the alliance develop its cognitive warfare capacities. The study described this phenomenon as the militarization of brain science, but it appears clear that NATO's development of cognitive warfare will lead to a militarization of all aspects of human society and psychology, from the most intimate of social relationships to the mind itself. Do you understand how serious this is? This is not only treason against the United States and any free country ever. This is literally betraying and treason against people in general. This is literally anti-humanity. This goes against everything that anybody has ever stood for, ever. Ridiculous. Such all-encompassing militarization of society is reflected in the paranoid tone of the NATO-sponsored report, which warned of an embedded 5th column where everyone is, unbeknownst to him or her, behaving according to the plans of one of our competitors. That's the scariest part of this. Everyone, unbeknownst to him or her, so whether you are aware or not, are behaving according to the plans of one of our competitors. The study makes clear that those competitors purportedly exploiting the consciousness of Western dissidents are China and Russia. In other words, this document shows that figures in the NATO military cartel increasingly see their own domestic population as a threat, fearing civilians to be potential Chinese or Russian sleeper cells, dastardly 5th columns that challenge the stability of Western liberal democracies. So that's basically it. I mean, the DHS report that came out a couple months ago. What was that, back in August? No, that was back in June or July, when they were saying that domestic terrorists were getting propaganda fed to them from the outside. That was, influencing our behavior, right? NATO's development of novel forms of hybrid warfare come at a time when member states' military campaigns are targeting domestic populations on an unprecedented level. The Ottawa Citizen reported this September that the Canadian military's Joint Operations Command took advantage of the C-19 situation to wage an information war against its own domestic population, testing out propaganda on Canadian civilians. Internal NATO-sponsored reports suggest that this disclosure is just scratching the surface of a wave of new unconventional warfare techniques that Western militaries are employing around the world. Canada hosts NATO Innovation Challenge on cognitive warfare. Twice each year, NATO holds a pitch-style event that it brands as an innovation challenge. These campaigns, one hosted in the spring, the other in the fall, by alternating member states, call on private companies, organizations, and researchers to help develop new tactics and technologies for the military alliance. The Shark Tank-like challenges reflect the predominant influence of neoliberal ideology within NATO, as participants mobilize the free market, public-private partnerships, and the promise of cash prizes to advance the agenda of military-industrial complex. What's that sound like? NATO's Fall 2021 Innovation Challenge is hosted by Canada and is titled The Invisible Threat: Tools for Countering Cognitive Warfare. Cognitive warfare seeks to change not only what people think, but also how they act. The Canadian government wrote in its official statement on the challenge, attacks against the cognitive domain involved integration of cyber, disinformation, misinformation, psychological and social engineering capabilities. Ottawa's press release continued, cognitive warfare positions in the mind as a battle space and contested domain. Its objective is to sow dissonance, instigate conflicting narratives, polarize opinion, and radicalize groups. Cognitive warfare can motivate people to act in ways that can disrupt or fragment an otherwise cohesive society. This is what we've pretty much seen all of 2020 and 2021. This is what we've seen in practice. You can't even put something up anymore without getting just either taken down, labeled, just drowned in misinformation on their end. It's just crazy. NATO-backed Canadian military officials discussed cognitive warfare in panel event. So Canada, of course, you're in on this too, because it's the whole world, not just here. An advocacy group called the NATO Association of Canada has mobilized to support this innovation challenge, working closely with military contractors to attract the private sector to invest in further research on behalf of NATO and its own bottom line. While the NAOC is technically an independent NGO, its mission is to promote NATO, and the organization boasts on its website. The NAOC has strong ties with the Government of Canada, including Global Affairs Canada and the Department of National Defence. As part of its efforts to promote Canada's NATO Innovation Challenge, the NAOC held a panel discussion on cognitive warfare on October 5th. And the researcher who wrote the definitive 2020 NATO-sponsored study on cognitive warfare, Francois du Cluzel, participated in the event alongside NATO-backed Canadian military officers. And here are the traders right here. The top middle guy, the second one, he is the one that apparently wrote the NATO-sponsored study on cognitive warfare. Okay, so the panel was overseen by Robert Baines, president of NATO Association of Canada, blah, 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 blah. Moderated by Garrick Guy, marketing executive in the weapons industry, who serves as an advisor to the Canadian Department of National Defence, and vice president and director of the NAOC. Baines opened the event, noting that participants will discuss cognitive warfare and new domain of competition, where state and non-state actors aim to influence what people think and how they act. The NAOC president also happily noted the lucrative opportunities for Canadian companies that this NATO Innovation Challenge promised. Yeah, they promise to your companies and they'll promise all this stuff, but you're talking about cognitive warfare. There's no type of payment that, or any kind of bribe that they could ever give me that I would just be like, yeah, sure. Let's go ahead and implement this cognitive warfare program. Come on. Okay, so this basically just October 5th panel kicked off with Francois Duclouzel, former French military officer who in 2013 helped to create the NATO Innovation Hub, which he has since then managed from its base in Norfolk, Virginia. Okay, I'm trying to get down where... Okay, the hub insists on its website for legal reasons that the opinions expressed on this platform don't constitute NATO or any other organization points of view. The organization is sponsored by the Allied Command Transformation, described as one of two strategic commands at the head of NATO's military command structure. The Innovation Hub, therefore, acts as a kind of in-house NATO research center or think tank. Its research is not necessarily official NATO policy, but it's directly supported and overseen by NATO. So you could say it is direct and official NATO policy. Okay, in 2020, NATO's Supreme Allied Commander Transformation conducted a 6-month study on cognitive warfare. Duclouzel summarized in his research in the panel this October. He initiated his remarks noting that cognitive warfare right now is one of the hottest topics for NATO and has become a recurring term in the military terminology in recent years. So they just had this panel in October. Although French, Duclouzel emphasized that cognitive warfare strategies being currently developed by my command here in Norfolk, USA. The NATO Innovation Hub manager spoke with PowerPoint presentation and opened with a provocative slide that described cognitive warfare as a battle for the brain, and here is that slide. So basically they declared war on all of our minds openly. And they're admitting that they can literally influence and control your behavior without you even knowing. They're putting it all out there. Cognitive warfare is a new concept that starts in the information sphere that is kind of hybrid warfare. It starts with hyperconnectivity. Everyone has a cell phone, he continued. It starts with information because information is, if I may say, the fuel of cognitive warfare. But it goes way beyond solely information, which is a standalone operation. Information warfare is a standalone operation. Cognitive warfare overlaps with big tech corporations and mass surveillance because it's all about leveraging big data, Duclouzel explained. We produce data everywhere we go, every minute, every second. We go online. And this is extremely easy to leverage those data in order to better know you and use that knowledge to change the way you think. This is how they're going to get people to accept their new world order. Right here. This kind of thing, even 2 years ago, if you would have said something about this, or even now, people will look at you like you are a lunatic. But it's all real. It's all real life. Naturally, the NATO researcher claimed foreign adversaries are the supposed aggressors employing cognitive warfare. But at the same time, he made it clear that the Western military alliance is developing its own tactics. Okay, he defined cognitive warfare as the art of using technologies to alter the cognition of human targets. That really just brings me back to silent weapons for quiet wars. It's what it is, right? It's literally right here. This is all part of it. Those technologies, he noted, incorporate the fields of MBIC, nanotechnology, biotechnology, information technology, and cognitive science, Altogether, it makes kind of a very dangerous cocktail that could further manipulate the brain, he said. Why are these people so interested in manipulating people's minds? And the answer is because they're terrified. Okay, he went on to explain that the exotic new method of attack goes well beyond information warfare or psychological operations. Cognitive warfare is not only a fight against what we think, but it's rather a fight against the way we think. If we could change the way people think, he said, it's much more powerful and it goes way beyond the information warfare and psyops. Well, yeah, because you could just skip all of that. You don't have to do any of that now because you took the fight out of people. You already made them believe what you want them to believe. You don't have to go these old routes anymore by just trying to, use psychological operations and, what's the other one? Sorry. Information. You don't have to, come out with all of that because cognitive warfare, you cut that out. You went straight to the source. Boom, done. Okay, the clues out continued. It's crucial to understand that it's a game on our cognition, on the way our brain processes information and turns it into knowledge, rather than solely a game on information or psychological aspects of our brains. It's not only an action against what we think, but it's also an action against the way we think, the way we process information and turn it into knowledge. In other words, cognitive warfare is not just another name for information warfare. It's a war on our individual processor, our brain. The NATO researchers stressed that it's extremely important for us in the military because it has the potential, by developing new weapons and ways of harming the brain, it has potential to engage neuroscience and technology in many, many different approaches to influence human ecology. Because you all know that it's very easy to turn a civilian technology into a military one. As for who the targets of cognitive warfare could be, the clues out reveal that anyone and everyone is on the table. And don't get it twisted, it's everybody, every person in the world. Can you imagine what they can get people to do with this type of thing? This is also what they mean by rewrite the social contract. There'd be no more need for laws in trying to make people act a certain way, because you can already go straight into their brain and make them act a certain way using cognitive warfare, according to this guy and all these other people at NATO. You could just get your subjects to right in line, do what I say, and all they got to do is sit back and let the program roll. And as he said, this goes way beyond disinfo campaigns and psyops. Cognitive warfare has universal reach, from starting with the individual to states and multinational organizations, he said. Its field of action is global and aimed to seize control of the human being, civilian as well as military. So, of the entire world, as in world government, Georgia Guidestones. Private sector has a financial interest in advancing cognitive warfare research. He noted the massive worldwide investments made in neurosciences suggest that the cognitive domain will probably be one of the battlefields of the future. The development of cognitive warfare totally transforms military conflict as we know it, he said, adding a third major combat dimension to the modern battlefield. To the physical and informational dimension is now added a cognitive dimension. This creates a new space of competition beyond what is called the 5 domains of operations, or land, sea, air, cyber, and space domains. Warfare in the cognitive arena mobilizes a wider range of battle spaces than solely physical and information dimensions can do. In short, Humans themselves are the new contested domain in this novel mode of hybrid warfare, alongside land, sea, air, cyber, and outer space. Do you really understand what this means? They will have officially conquered the human being. They declared war on us. So all of you people running around still scared of a little tiny bug, you need to shut up. Seriously, shut your mouth. This is far more dangerous than any virus. Far more dangerous than anything. You don't want to live in this world. And this is their new world order that they have planned for all of us. NATO's cognitive warfare study warns of embedded fifth column. A study that NATO Innovation Hub manager Francois Ducluzel conducted from June to November 2020 was sponsored by the military cartel's Allied Command Transformation and published as a 45-page report in January 2021. Chilling document shows how contemporary warfare has reached a kind of dystopian stage, once imaginable only in science fiction. Quote, "The nature of warfare has changed," the report emphasized. "The majority of current conflicts remain below the threshold of traditionally accepted definition of warfare. But new forms of warfare have emerged, such as cognitive warfare, while the human mind is now being considered as a new domain of war." So yeah, like you are the battlefield. You versus their cognitive warfare programs. For NATO, research on cognitive warfare is not just defensive, it is very much offensive as well. Developing capabilities to harm the cognitive abilities of opponents will be necessity, Ducluzel's report stated clearly. In other words, NATO will need to get the ability to safeguard her decision-making process and disrupt the adversary's one. And anyone could be the target of these cognitive warfare operations. Any user of modern information technologies is a potential target. It targets the whole of a nation's human capital, the report ominously added. Human capital. That's what they call you. Useless eater. Jeez. As well as the potential execution of a cognitive war to complement a military conflict, it can also be conducted alone, without any link to an engagement of the armed forces, the study went on. Moreover, cognitive warfare is potentially endless since there could be no peace treaty or surrender for this type of conflict. You see what they're setting up? This is beyond out of control. We all need to spread the word on this. Like now. I will link this. I'm not going to get to read the whole thing, but I will link this. I'll read a little bit more, and I got to get going. But this is serious. Just as this new mode of battle has no geographic borders, it also has no time limit. This battlefield is global via the internet, with no beginning and no end. Its conquest knows no respite, punctuated by notifications from our smartphones anywhere, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Come on. Come on. I think this is a good place to stop because it's just... Yeah, it just goes on to talk about how they're already going through all of this and they're already like pretty much accepting it. And okay, let's see. I'll read this one down here. This weaponization of neuro-ST, I'm not sure what ST stands for. Science and technology, that's what it is. Weaponization of neuroscience and neurotechnology can and will be fatal. The NATO-sponsored study was clear to point out the research can be utilized to mitigate aggression and foster cognitions and emotions of affiliation or passivity. Induced morbidity. disability, or suffering, and neutralize potential opponents or incur mortality. In other words, to maim and kill people. You know what that means for all of us? We're gone. No battle has to be fought. They just get to use their new form of warfare that they've been simping over. They literally put it out there for you to read and to understand, and most people won't. Most people will never even know what cognitive warfare is, especially whenever it really starts going. Because then nobody's going to know what cognitive warfare is, because those of us who know what it is are either going to be taken out, or it's going to be taken out of our minds completely, because they could do that kind of thing. Yeah, and look at this. The report quoted U.S. Major General Robert H. Scales, who summarized NATO's new combat philosophy. Quote, victory will be defined more in terms of capturing the psychocultural rather than the geographical high ground. And as NATO develops tactics of cognitive warfare to capture the psychocultural, it's also increasingly weaponizing various scientific fields. Duh. I'm actually going to stop here. This is a good spot, and I will continue this in my next video. But this is super important. You need to get this out now. Like right now. It'll be the first thing linked. Watch, I'll go copy it right now. Boom. Link copied. All right, let's pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and give us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.